They want us to solve this quadratic equation by completing the square. Now this is a good candidate for that because B is even and A is 1. Whenever B is even and A is 1, completing the square is very easy to do. So here's what we're going to do. First of all, we're gonna rewrite this equation. Whoops, I put 4. This isn't 4. This is 2. We're going to rewrite the equation. And we're going to leave these together, and we're going to move the 32 over to the other side. You don't have to do that, but I suggest it because it's a little bit simpler. And now what we're going to do, there's just a very simple algorithm here. I'm going to add something to both sides of the equation. And that something is half of b squared. Half of b squared.
So it's just 4.
So it's 4. It's 2 squared, which is 4. And the reason I did that is because now, what does this thing do right here? It factors into what? X plus 2 times x plus 2. Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
What's x plus 2? X plus 2 the same
X
as?
squared plus 4.
Nope. It's x plus 2 squared. That's why it's called completing the square. And what's this side equal?
36.
36. Now, the reason I do that is because now, how can I solve this equation for x? Now that I only have one x in my equation, I can treat it kind of like a linear equation, and I can isolate the variable. So what do I get rid of first, the plus 2 or the squared?
Squared.
And how do I get rid of squared?
Square root.
Good, so I'm going to have plus or minus 6. Don't forget the plus or minus. X plus 2 equals plus or minus 6. And now how do I get rid of the 2?
You subtract 2.
So negative 2 plus or minus 6. Negative 2 plus 6 is 4. Negative 2 minus 6 is negative 8. There are my two answers. And I check them if they're right by plugging them both one at a time back in for x. So let's check 4. 4 squared is 16. 4 times 4 is 16. 16 plus 16 is 32. Minus 32 is 0. It works. You could do the same thing with negative 8 and it will work as well. That's how you solve an equation by completing the square. Did you have to do it by completing the square? No. You could have done it by factoring. If you factored right away, what would you have gotten?
X plus 2, x plus 2.
You would have gotten x plus 8 times x minus 4. And what would your two answers have been? The same two answers. In fact, that's how I knew that that's how it would have factored, because I looked at these two answers and I went backward to find the two factors, which is something else that I'm going to teach you how to do later. Okay? But that's what completing the square is. It's a very valuable thing to do when, for instance, let's do another one. If I have x squared plus 4x plus 7 equals 0. Now this isn't going to factor, right? But we still have a leading coefficient of 1 and an even b term. So watch how quick and easily I can do this. Once you get good at it, it's very easy. I'm going to go x squared plus 4x plus 4 equals negative 7 plus 4. See how I added 4 to both sides? So it's x plus 2 squared equals negative 3. And now in my head I can just solve. It's going to be square root of 3i, right? Plus or minus the square root of 3i minus 2. And there are my answers. Negative 2 plus or minus I root 3. Let me do another one that isn't a little bit different. X squared plus 6x plus 10 equals 0. So I'm going to move the 10 over. Whoops. I'm going to move the 10 over. 6x equals negative 10. Dang it. Let me make this 8 instead of 10 so that it's a real number. Let me make it 7. So I'm going to subtract 7 from both sides, right? And I'm going to add what to both sides? What am I going to add to both sides? half of this
3.
squared.
No,
I'm going
9.
to add 9 to both sides. And what's this going to give me?
X plus 3.
X plus 3 squared.
And then that would just equal 2.
2. So what are my answers? Let's do it in our head. I'm going to get rid of the squared, which is going to be the plus or minus the square root of 2, right? And then I'm going to subtract 3.
So it's negative 3 plus or minus square root of 2.
There are my two answers. Now, if you would have done this, you can't factor this, but if you would have done the quadratic formula, it would have taken you a lot longer to get to that answer. You would have gotten the same answer, but it would have taken you a lot longer. So that's the advantage of completing the square. It's the best, it's the easiest to do when your leading coefficient is 1 and your b term is even. Completing the square is a very simple thing once you get the hang of it. Okay? But you got to get the hang of it first.